I'll read our prayer to open the Torah study. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe. You have sanctified us through your commandments and commanded us to busy ourselves in things of Torah. Amen.
Amen.
Well, one of the things that we want to do is to finish the crossing of the Sea of Reeds with a very short portion of Exodus 15. Hi, Gail.
You mind if I do my poem first?
Oh, yes, please, David. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. Gersonides, or Rabbi Levi Ben Gershon, is the only person that I know, the only rabbi of whom I am aware.
Oh, we have the same problem again. Ricky is a source of that.
Yeah. I'll try. It won't let me on the normal way. So it says, coming through your browser. When I come in through the browser, you get the echo. I'm going to try one more time, and maybe you guys won't see me after this. Who knows?
Okay, we'll see what happens.
He's the only one, as I know, with a crater on the moon named after him. And the first of his quotations really is relevant to Ukraine, even though it's 400 or 500 years ago. A peace that comes from fear and not from the heart is the opposite of peace. And the other one is a little bit of philosophy from him for a plea for understanding and caution. Do not lose sight of wisdom and understanding, but preserve them always. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
David, can I just ask how did it come about that there's a crater named after him? What's the background?
I don't know. I noticed it when I was a young teenager doing the lunar training program. And of course, it caught my name, Rabbi Levi, but it wasn't until recently. And it turns out, that as far as I know, he's the only rabbi that's been so honored. I know he was an astronomer, and he was one of the very few astronomers back in the pre-telescope days that rejected Ptolemy's theory of the Earth-centered universe. So that might be it. But so did Maimonides, I think.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Okay.
Well, so we're going to only start with Exodus 15, verses 20 and 21. And if somebody, we last time we discussed the song or poem of Moses. And now we're going to see what Miriam does.
Okay, I can start if you say.
Okay, please.
And Miriam the prophetess, the sister of Aaron, took a timbrel in her hand, and all the women went out after her with timbrels and with dances. And Miriam sang unto them, Sing ye to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. The horse and his rider hath he thrown into the sea.
Okay.
Could I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just, it's sort of a preliminary Klutz question.
Sure.
Question that I wanted to ask. I might have to ask the rabbi to give me an opinion on that. Why are we calling Miriam a prophetess?
That's the very first question.
Oh,
right.
so sorry.
No, but that's important. It's very important.
Yeah.
I would suggest it's because she's the sister of Moses.
Well, that's the next question.
She also saved Moses' life by carrying the basket when Moses was a baby and put it into the Nile and followed it until the princess discovered it floating down the Nile.
Yeah,
If he hadn't done that, Moses probably would have perished, and we'd still be slaves in Egypt.
As a matter of fact, what you just said was very similar to the discussion we had about Shifra and Puah. Some people have called them prophetess. Okay. But Gail, your hand is up.
I was wondering why it says that she is Aaron's sister. Doesn't say anything about, why not say he was Moses, she was Moses and
Well,
Aaron?
that, as I said, is our second question.
don't quite
First,
get
let's
that.
go over why she is called a prophetess. Because, really very little mention of her is made. But what does she do at the outset? When Moses is found in the basket. And after Shifra and Puah say, okay, we're going to, we're going to save the child, et cetera, et cetera. But what does Miriam's sister do? To save some time, rabbis.
Well, she steps forward and asks the daughter of Pharaoh, Bithai, if she wants a nursemaid for the child, et cetera, et cetera. And then she makes the connection back to Yocheved.
Right. And
I think that's what David was referring to, that she saved Moses' life in that sense.
That's right. But also allows the kid to have a Jewish education, at the same time.
Sunday school.
Yes. Yes, Steve, please.
no,
And
yeah,
then
no, I was just looking up the etymological origin of the root, is Nun Bet Aleph. And it's actually, it doesn't, the original like Semitic languages don't connect it with any sort of God connection, but it's basically a proclamation announcing. It's announce or proclaim in Arabic. It can be uttered with a low voice or announced. So it's not necessarily a person with the ability to predict the future or a person who is and has a connection with God, but a person who makes important announcements, okay? Kind of your,
yes.
What do they call them on the news? The anchor, the person who really, headlines the news, the important news.
Very
and
well
there's
stated.
even a difference when Moses is called a Navi, a prophet. There's a difference between his role as a prophet and those who were members of the prophetic guild, later on in the times of the kings. So
Very important.
the title changes its understanding, and even where the ability to be a spokesperson, where that derives from throughout the Israelite history.
Very good point. Don.
Just before we broke last week, we hit some verses of prophecy, a few verses back suddenly, and those verses are reaching forward over 4 decades into Canaan. And I wasn't quite sure who was uttering those words. And now we've hit Miriam also being the prophetess. So it seems like we've, in this song at the end of Exodus, it's ending with prophecy that reaches very far forward. In fact, the more I thought about it during the week, I'm thinking this is like prophecy from chapters earlier into the Exodus as action into Zionism. That's not too radical a commentary. But now everything's moving into action, and the entire Hebrew tribe is moving east toward Canaan. But anyway, I just, to me, the whole chapter so far, or verses so far, are prophetic.
Okay.
I got stumbling around there. I hope I got that.
No, that's good. That's good. Rabbi Mary.
Good morning, Shabbat Shalom. I've been looking at the dictionary to see what, and there are kind of things written there. But my conclusion would be that Navi is not just the one, as we say, prophet who can tell you the future. It's like a mumche, someone who knows. And they show several things like Lo Navi Anochi velo ben Navi. I'm not a prophet and I'm not the son of a prophet. Saying, he's very modest. Don't ask me questions. And then another thing that's mentioned here is that the books that come after the Torah, we say Torah, Nevi'im, Uktuvim. And among the Nevi'im, you have only towards the end, you have the biggies. But you have Joshua and Shoftim and Shmuel. None of these people are prophets. So my conclusion would be that it was like a Torah, like a description of someone who knows, someone not that knows for the future, but someone that knows. Someone said that Chacham is better than Navi. A smart or a wise person is better than a rabbi. Okay. Things are very, very not clear. That I'm going to take that as someone who knows. Later on, we have Dvorah, a Neviah, and she's not only telling like an oracle what's going to happen. She's like a shofetet more. She's like a judge, an explainer. I don't know. That's from what I saw here. That's what comes to me.
Thank you, Rabbi Norman.
Yeah, I'm just going to say very few of those who are called prophets in the Tanakh do any kind of foretelling the future. Their role is much more, as Rabbi Miri is talking about, as an advisor, as someone for consultation, someone's very, very wise and worldly in knowledge. Only some of them actually claim to be bringing God's word as prophecy the way we understand it, with its implication of telling the future. It's those who talk about the future, for the most part, are giving warnings. They're not saying, they're saying, if you don't do this, this might happen to you, as opposed to, I know that it's going to happen. God has told me that it's going to happen.
Okay, good point. Yes, Michael.
Listening to this, it would remind me of a prophet is a person who has great wisdom, a very, very high level of wisdom.
Yeah.
Okay. Good point. Good point. So
you see, one more comment. When we talk about prophets, I call the vice president, Al Gore. In my mind, Al Gore is a prophet. He sees a situation and he concludes that if we keep doing these things might happen. But it's something. It's not that God talked to him and tell the people. So he's telling the people and no one listens anyway. So
Another good point. There is a book which I've read from before. Oh yes, David, please. David, you're muted.
I just wanted to say on the off subject that I totally agree with Rabbi Miri about Al Gore. I know Al Gore, and I talked with him on the 20th of July, 1994. We were talking not about politics, but about a comet colliding with Jupiter, and we talked for almost an hour. And it was a wonderful, wonderful meeting, and I have a huge respect for him.
By the way, as a result of all of that, we now search for asteroids that are near misses, okay, if you will, as they swing past the Earth. And so that whole program is a result of discussions like that.
Yeah, indeed it is. Thank you, Marty.
You're welcome. Well, Rabbi Schwartz, Barry Schwartz, I don't know if the rabbis are familiar with
By name.
in his book, The Path of the Prophets, the ethics-driven life. So maybe what we need to include in the term for in the wisdom of a prophet is that their life is exemplary, and it's led by their belief that certain values have a lot of merit, much more than the mundane beliefs that we have that we sometimes latch on to get ahead. That sometimes the ethics are more important. So if we take that into consideration, what Miriam has done, if we look at the events in her life that are written about in Torah, because Torah doesn't say very much more about her in the past, and also at what she does at the end of the crossing of the Reed Sea.
Thank you.
She does not, she shows that she's really into this. She understands what's going on. She helps sow the seeds of this transformation. And also she's now has the ability not only to reap benefits of planting those seeds, but also has an eye on what this may mean for the Israelites. So I think you can tie it together that way. I think Rabbi Schwartz does tend to do this. I just wanted to read a little bit from his book. The fact that Miriam is called the prophetess is stunning, both unexpected and unexplained. Also stunning is that she is the first individual in the Torah after Abraham to be called a prophet. Only later is her brother given that designation. The sages gamely tried to fill in the biblical gap by suggesting that Miriam predicted Moses' birth, and even that it was she as a young child who convinced her parents to stay together and conceive another child. So there's a lot of midrash to fill in all these gaps. This seems to be recognized centuries later when the prophet Micah, recalling the Exodus, emphasizes that God says, "I sent you Moses, Aaron, and Miriam." As Miriam is remembered for her decisive moment of joy and celebration, how are we to understand the final disturbing story about her? I'm not going to open that door at this point. We will discuss that in the future. So there are people who have thought about this. And there may be many others that I am just not familiar with. Just have not studied that, prophecy as a, or prophetic moments. And I have not read many books except this one. So if the rabbis have any other information on that subject, please add to the discussion. No? Okay. So now, as Gail brought up, Gail, do you want to restate your question?
I don't, she's referred to as Aaron's
Sister.
or sister of,
Yeah,
but not Moses.
and not Moses.
Well, I've always said Aaron is such a mysterious figure. I don't know, but once it's even stated that Moses and Aaron are brothers, which adds to the confusion for me. So I don't know.
Well, let's open that door now, because that becomes very important. Any ideas first? No? Okay, Gail, it's a good question. I have a little commentary, and and if other sources are out there, please read from them before I read mine. I don't want to usurp all the discussion time. Yes, David. And then Steve. David, you're muted.
I'm also complimenting you, Marty, on your choice of T-shirt today
Oh,
with the "Live Long and Prosper" on it.
yes.
What I wanted to say is that Aaron is introduced very early for a number of reasons, not the least of which is that Moses has him doing most of the things as a prophet would. He has Aaron cast his rod across to have it turn into a cobra and then back again. He, almost all the plagues, I think, he says to Aaron, stretch out my staff. And also we heard that perhaps Moses might have had a speech impediment, so that Aaron helped him with his speech. This is what brothers do. And I think in addition to brothers, they were friends, good friends.
Good way of putting it. Very good way of putting it. Yes, Steve.
Yeah. Here's a sort of a crazy out there idea, and I'm just presenting it mostly to amuse people, I think. And this is Gail's question. Okay, why is she the sister of Aaron and not mentioned as the sister of Moses? Okay, and Freud said that Moses was an Egyptian nobleman. Moses wasn't related to any of these people at all, but was an inspired person and became their leader, and ultimately, by his theory, was killed by them too. But that would explain why there is an established sort of mythology that connects Moses with the family. Oh yeah, he was floating in a river, he was rescued, that has the sound of sort of a myth to establish a family connection. Maybe the family connection wasn't exactly there. So yeah, so he was actually he had the status of being in that family, but maybe he actually wasn't. So therefore, he was not biologically their sibling.
Okay.
I know.
It's good. It's good. Yes, Rabbi.
I just remembered, and I think I remembered it because Steve used the word, this may be a stretch, okay? But I had a teacher in Jerusalem who I just remembered that he had an alternative reading to the verse, okay? So you have to bear with me. It makes a little more sense in Hebrew than it does in the English, but it still is a stretch. Okay. His reading of it was Miriam took the timbrel that the prophet Hanavi, and in the Torah, Hanavi is Moses. Okay, the Torah ends with, "There never again did arise a prophet like Moses." In all of the like, so Miriam took the timbrel that the Navi, the prophet, meaning Moses, gave her. And incidentally, parentheses, in case you didn't know who Miriam was, she's also the sister of Aaron. So he had his name was Abraham Chen. He wasn't a rabbi, just a biblical scholar, and he presented that kind of a rereading of the verse. And I just remembered it when Steve said something. This may be a stretch, but because it's adding some things that aren't really there. But again, those who would defend Moses as the prophet par excellence, would find, that's what that really means.
Okay. Yes,
I'm
Don.
just thinking,
Wait a minute.
Norman,
Don had his hand up. Don had his hand up.
Do I echo now? Do I echo?
No, you do not.
Okay.
Perfect. Yes, Don.
Well, Freud's book was Moses and Akhenaton, which connected Moses with Egyptian royalty. But that theory also involved collapsing history by several hundred years. So it's kind of a stretch to go there, I think, at least in this chapter. But the whole thing to me is incredibly intriguing. And I think Gail's question really starts the ball rolling on that. I guess I have to go read some more commentary.
Okay. Yes, first Rabbi Miri, then Gail.
Well, I just, it's funny to me what what Rabbi Norman said about the doctor's explanation. I'm just I'm an artist, so I vision Moshe. On one hand, he has a staff, and in the other hand, he walks around with a timbrel. Just and then he gives it to Miriam. So it's a kind of funny picture to see.
It would be. Oh, man. Yes, Gail.
Well, I'm going to interject Friedman per usual.
Please.
He notes that only the P source is the one that refers to Aaron and Moses as brothers. So there's only one source out of all the different sources that do that. The rest of them don't. So I don't know. Majority rules, maybe?
Well, could this also be a commentary about the family?
That's a stretch.
Well, you have two brothers and a sister who are working towards a common goal. Any thought about that?
Well, it's an assumption, but I don't know if there's.
If people are working for a common goal, just to reverse it, not of the family, sometimes people will be called brothers and sisters working towards that common cause. Their family. And so it's something to at least think about. Yes.
Well, I think it's the priestly source that really, to them, it would be very important that this is a blood relation. I don't know if the other sources are that concerned with it, but the priest certainly would be.
Well, I was thinking about this from another direction. If you have three siblings who understand, truly believe, and are, we say they're wise in and of their own right, but together, their parents probably had some role in that. There's nothing written about this part, except if you want to go back to Otto Preminger, okay? Because he has some scenes depicting the family early on, okay? But if you give some thought to the parents, what kind of parenting could they have exhibited that influenced their children this way? By doing this, are they honoring their parents? Yes, Gail.
Well, I know I'm moving down the road a little quickly here, but there comes a time when it's 2 against 1 in what you were referring to as a family. So I can't necessarily buy all that theory, but whatever.
Okay. But the thought crossed my mind. That's all. Yes, Don.
Just coming back to Miriam once more, I had a question earlier which I didn't hear an answer to, if anyone knows. She's designated a prophetess in verse 20, but she doesn't utter any prophecy. All the prophecy is in the previous few verses, which predict that the Israelites will invade Canaan and Moab. And is it Miriam who made that prophecy? Because after that, she doesn't seem to make any other prophecy.
That's right.
So is that her prophecy? Is it what we just read last week?
It's a good question, but I think there's an answer. Yes, Rabbi.
Well, I think part of the answer is that again, we're kind of only looking at the one understanding of the word prophet, prophetess. Okay, and it didn't necessarily mean to prophesize every
That's
single
what we
time.
had discussed before.
Okay?
That's
Yeah,
right.
that's what we were saying. It could have been a particular kind of honorific title that was given to somebody who did something special in the leadership of the people, and just was a title that everybody understood at that time. But it doesn't necessarily resonate with us in our either Hebrew or English verbiage today.
But then who made the prophecy from verse 15 through 20?
Well, traditionally is understood as the Song of Moses. That Moses is the one who composed it. That's the traditional explanation.
That is correct. There's another explanation out there that it may be the Song of Miriam.
Yeah, because it does later
Yeah.
on. It does say that she led everyone in chanting,
Yes.
in chanting and singing.
That's right. So,
Or that Miriam and Moses were the Gilbert and Sullivan of their day. So
so it's a combination. Maybe the prophet. It's not all. It maybe a prophet not only speaks the word of God, but acts it out. Because dancing and singing, there's a whole treatise in Plaut about the women danced and how dancing and singing was part of the custom in the temple until the great diaspora, that time period. Then no more dancing or singing in the temple. So, but it's revived then by the Hasidim. So it's something to just think about. You may other commentaries may have more on that subject. So if any of you have that, just feel free to add. Yes, Steve, were you going to say something?
No.
No? Oh, okay. Okay. So we have, so the participation of the women, it's not just the men. And this may be a very important component, that it takes a whole bunch of different approaches to achieve doing the right thing. That you don't have and that's going to open our next part of the discussion. With that in mind, we have covered the story of the Exodus to this point. What have we learned so far? Well, why do we remember this every year? Why do we recall it? We've discussed some of this before, but not from this context. Well, what's going on here about the different people involved in this story? Who are they? What do they truly believe? What do they question? Any further discussions on that? Well, rabbis, why is Passover, the story of Passover, so important? It becomes
Because we enjoy eating matzah so much.
there you go. There you go.
Actually, the charoset,
Right.
just the charoset.
And why the ritual? Why do we get into this every year?
Because what is it? 36 times in the Torah, we are told to remember that we were slaves in Egypt and that God brought us out with an outstretched arm, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and that we have to treat others with
Right.
with dignity and respect because we didn't know that in Egypt, et cetera, and
Right.
v'chule, as we say.
Because we were aliens in Egypt.
That's right.
One of the
Oh.
things that
Wait, excuse me, Michael, before you speak up, David has had his hand up for a long time, and I think it's a Wendy hand.
No, it's not. This is.
Oh, you got me.
But one of the things that gets to me is that we are told several times in the Seder that we must recount the story of the Exodus as if we ourselves personally were there. And I think that is the key, that by doing it every year, it's as if we were there ourselves.
Very good. Very good. Yes, Michael.
Yeah, can you repeat what you said just before David started to speak? You asked a question or you made a comment. Could you repeat that?
Well, basically, why go through this ritual every time, every year? Why are we told to remember it? The rabbi answered that that's the traditional explanation, but there is some deeper meanings to this. There are much deeper meanings.
And you mentioned something, just a minute, Steve. You mentioned something about respecting others also, other people.
I don't remember if that
Well,
came
I
up.
did, yeah.
Yes, the rabbi did.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, it seems to me, I take it kind of a different approach that the reason for the respecting of others is that if you believe that we're all made in the image of God, if we all are in the image of God, then we have to respect that from that point of view, because you don't know who you're really talking to, and you have to demonstrate respect from that point of view, since we are, and if you do believe that we are created in the image of God, so we look like God, God looks like us. So from that point of view, I would say that deems respect, that shows that you have to respect.
Can I just add something more to that?
Why
It's
not?
very important. If each of us are created in that image, Michael, then it's so if I asked everybody to raise their hand, and if people truly believe that, they will raise their hand, and then you look around and so many people believe that. So that word respect becomes very important. It's not only respecting others, it's also respecting ourselves. We expect, and we have to first respect ourselves. Then we can easily understand why it's important to respect others, because then they will be respecting us in return. It's a multifaceted avenue. It's not and that's just with the word respect. There's more to it, but that's one word that can be used. Yes, Steve.
Yeah, memory is an important part of personal identity.
Yes.
It may almost be equivalent to personal identity, which is why Alzheimer's disease is so devastating. It takes away, to a large degree, who you are. And same thing goes for people. A people have a common memory, and memory is something you rehash to establish your identity. Hence, it's very important to be highly repetitive about this story of the Exodus. This is the story of our origins, okay? This is what unites us as a people. This is how we started out, you know, with a special link to God and being saved from slavery. So aside from the message to recognize others and the value of others, which is very important, it's got a little bit of an egotistical rationale too, which is identity.
Yes. Very good. Now, Grace has had her hand up for a while, and then David again. Grace?
Thank you. So I don't mean to backstep, but I want to get back to Miriam for a moment.
Sure.
So was she a stargazer?
Why do you ask that
What do you
question?
mean?
Because she would be looking into the heavens for where the, God created the heavens and the earth. One thing. The other thought is, who of the women before her, were upright standing and say, this is what we need to look at or do or become as women, So I know that Raquel and Leah and the women in the Bible prior to her, that this, and she rescues this baby, right? So I don't know that I recall any of that ever being forward thinking. She was a forward thinker, and I looked up prophetess, and I had a hard time spelling it. I'm a lousy speller, and it was fun and interesting, but as a seer or a stargazer, perhaps even, that's what I came up with that meant the most to me. That I just wanted to comment on that.
That very good. And it could be. David, your hand is up. Oh, this time it is a Wendy hand.
Thinking back when you said, why is this important for us to remember Passover or the leaving of Egypt and the slavery? Well, remember, there's been a lot of history in this whole, in our, not our lifespan, the lifespan of the ages, of people being put into slavery, people being abused. And the Jews seem to, I know the blacks have gotten it really bad, but the Jews got it. When we got it bad. Then it was the Holocaust, and the mottos are, never forget, never forget. And that's why Israel right now is doing so much to help Ukraine. And I watch everything about Ukraine because I tell David, I said, I don't want to forget what's going on here. I want to know that we're helping. So I think it's just letting history repeat itself if you forget it or don't care about it.
That's an excellent point there. Yes, Don. Really good, everyone.
One thing I always have to keep reminding myself is that celebrating at the Seder every year is also another ritual to energize the Tanakh, because I'm always amazed when I think of the rabbi scribes who copy each Torah by hand and parchment, and how impervious that is to editing or to changing or to photoshopping or to anything that detracts from the original text. And so I think when we, in the Seder, that's just part of the energy it takes to keep that going. Otherwise we wouldn't be sitting here wondering why Miriam is called a prophetess, because it's been preserved for over 1,000 years in hard copy.
Maybe some of maybe part of the story was lost to history. We don't know. That's something else that we haven't entered into the discussion. Yes, Ricky.
I'd like to pick up on one little teeny piece Donald just said of, since it's handwritten, that also leaves it open for mistakes to be made, as we know and we have seen. So it isn't 100% guaranteed that it'll always be the same. So you were using that because it's handwritten, that therefore it's consistent. And I say because it's handwritten, it could be inconsistent.
Okay, just as oral transmission.
Exactly.
Okay. Yes, Grace.
The other thing about this whole ordeal, with going through the Sea of Reed, is it perhaps a metaphor for rebirth, like on the Seder plate with the egg?
Very interesting. Did you want to elaborate some more on that?
Well, we're discussing all of it, but also with Miriam's, foreseeing or becoming really recognized, I thought of that, The woman provides the egg, yes?
You bet.
Okay, that's all. I just kind of saw.
Okay. No, that's a good thought, an excellent thought. Yes, Rabbi Mary.
Well, I don't know if you discussed this, but Grace, something that we discuss as a metaphoric way of crossing the sea and coming here is we were in Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim in Hebrew is narrow places. So we are in a narrow place, and then the water breaks. Remember when the water breaks? The water breaks and we come out as a people. And then everyone is very happy of the birth of the people after the water broke and coming out. So it is birth.
Very good. Very good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Excellent. Very good. Yes, Gail.
I remember Mary teaching that when she was teaching her class every year. And it really stuck in my mind. So thank you for repeating it, Mary.
That's good. But again, yes, this is if you will, and I hate to use this. There's it's been used in book titles and movies. Birth of a Nation. Okay, this is before we had the birth of. If now we have to shift gears a little bit. We have the creation or the birth of the world. We then have the creation of man, and all of the situations that man has to go through until a special person, Abraham, is singled out and from then on, the story goes from one patriarch and matriarch to the next, leading to the story of the Exodus, and then so each one is a rebirth, as if there's a direction. Certain conditions have to be correct. Can we think of anything in modern? Oh, Michael, you have your hand up, but I was going to ask the question for others. Can you think of anything recently that is also in that category of rebirth? Yes, Michael.
Yeah, can I go back a
Sure.
little bit, please, to the Wendy's hand? Wendy's hand.
Okay.
when Wendy says, "Never forget, never forget, never forget, never forget." Okay, so I just want to ask her, how does that have anything to do with preventing another Holocaust? And if it does, how? When you have people today who deny the Holocaust, so we're talking about Adolf Hitler's 1930s.
Mm-hmm.
So how does that? I assume when you say never forget, that's going to help in some odd way prevent another one. Because I never hear it. Everybody says never forget, but I don't hear enough of how to prevent exactly, and not just superficial, but some good, meaningful discussion on that. See, because I guess you shouldn't forget. You should never forget, but there's so much emphasis on that and not on something that's more important. That's to stop another one.
And that, what Michael is saying is also very germane to the overall discussion. Yes, David, I guess that's a Wendy hand.
Yeah, that's me. Michael, part of it is not just never forget, but the thing that we have to never forget is how the feeling of how badly they were hurt. And those people who are touting the Holocaust, that it was great and that Hitler was wonderful, they need to trade go into the shoes where they are the people being hurt and abused. Then they might think about something a little bit differently. Even during Passover a couple of years when our grandkids were fairly young but old enough to remember, we did a little scenario about what it felt like to be a slave. And our grandson was not happy with that. So we tried to make it so they can feel it. If they don't feel what happened, if they like watching people in pain and hurting, and there are people like that, they're the ones that need to switch places. And so we have to make them almost. Okay.
Okay, good. Yes, Don.
Yeah, please forgive me for pointing this out, but we are reading in this chapter about how the Israelites are on their way to eradicating the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Moabites in genocides that they are going to perpetrate under the shield of God. And I don't think we should ever forget that. What we're seeing, and this is after just wiping out the Egyptian army, that we need to at least contemplate what is going to happen and what does happen. So there's not a single Canaanite left except one. I'm so deeply troubled by this, but so forgive me for pointing it out.
We will cover that when we get there, okay? Because there's much more commentary when we discuss that. That will take us off in a totally different direction today.
Yeah, I realize.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay, yes, Steve. Steve, you're muted.
Sorry, I forgot the mute. Not to take us totally off into that other direction that you don't want to get into, but just sort of amplifying or agreeing with the point that Don brought up. I think that's unfortunately always a problem, because we always walk a thin line between establishing us and them. And there's a downside to that. There's always a downside if you take it to extremes. We're us and you're them. It ends badly. Okay, so you always have to walk that tightrope. That, you know, your own identity is important. It's important to us that we are Jews, but like any other people, we can't get too held up in that, to the point of excluding others and not recognizing the humanity of others as well. So,
Point.
and it's a thin line that you walk between, and every country walks it, between nationalism and fascism.
Very good.
You can take it to extremes, and it ends in violence, and we can't ever allow that to happen.
Good point. Yes, Rabbi.
I think just reworking what Don is saying, but also what Wendy had said, and then with Michael's question is, we don't forget, we shall not forget any of this. It's but we don't forget that we were slaves. We don't forget that we were oppressed. But also, Don's not the first one to point out that there are difficulties in the story of what happens to us afterwards, and we don't forget that.
Right.
We don't try to excuse it. We make that part of the overall lesson and the heritage that we have, that we proceed with. And what does that mean? What does that mean for us? We may not understand exactly, because it was such a totally different environment hundreds of thousands of years ago. But what does it mean for us? That's what we don't forget, to remember what it means for us.
Very important, very important. Because each time you do something incorrectly, you can either look at it as a tragedy, or you can look at it as a learning experience. If you only look at it as a tragedy, you have not learned even what the words "never forget" mean. You've got to figure out ways of overcoming those urges and everything else, so that you can pick up and move ahead. Otherwise, you stay fixated on the tragedy and never figure out any way to improve. And that's part of the lesson of Passover, because the rest of Torah and the Tanakh is showing what good and bad things do. And there are people who do good things and great things, and we remember them for it, but they also do something very tragic. So we have to learn from that negative experience as well. So there's much more. But we've been talking about this from the standpoint of a nation, a people, a community. We've forgotten the most important thing: us as individuals. We all go through these experiences ourselves. We put ourselves into thinking one way only, and we become slaves to that modality of thought, as opposed to trying to see the others, as Steve was pointing out, the others' position on things. So we do that, and we have to then go through, if you will, a fast forward of 6 months of redemption. What have you actually learned during the rest of the summer and into the early fall? What have you learned to allow you to change, to turn? So that's part of the time period between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So there's a continuance of this. It's not just remembering, but what have you done with what you remember as an individual? There's much more to that, and there's more that we could discuss here too. Yes, Rabbi.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on what you're saying and go back to. I recalled that this Song of Moses that
Yes.
we're culminating with, right, it is written in the singular.
Yes.
Okay, I will sing. This is what I experience. This is how I praise God. This is what it means for me. Not yet a we. Okay, there's still individuals who came through the sea, individuals who witnessed what happened in Egypt,
Right.
et cetera, et cetera.
So I'll stop there. I'm pontificating. Go ahead. Yes, Michael.
Yeah, I just want to throw this question out. How this question developed in my head through this discussion. So it's not for now, but maybe for a later time. But is world opinion for Israel, is it positive or negative? That we don't have to discuss. You won't talk about that now, but it's just something that came to my mind over this discussion, one way or another.
Okay. Somehow we have, I thought there was an echo for a second, but I guess not. Anyway, any other discussion about this before we turn the page, literally? So maybe Moses becomes a prophet later on, Rabbi, when and in the Torah, because he demonstrates, this is what I believe, this is what, it's not just speaking the word of God, it's doing the word of God and working for God. This is a servant of God.
One of my, I
Yeah.
mentioned Avraham Chen before, who was a teacher in Jerusalem. One of my professors in Cincinnati, Hanan Brichto, translated Navi as a God bringer.
There you go.
As a what?
God bringer.
Ah, Navi.
Mhm.
Okay.
That's right. So it's
Bring, yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
maybe that's why they reserve everything for the end. It's not just, it's everything that Moses is going to be doing. We know the story because we've read this year after year. So we can say, looking into the future, he does many things to bring God to the people, as the rabbi points out, but also he's the one, he's bringing it to the people. He's bringing the tea service to the people, if you will. And you can add one or two.
Is that T for Torah?
Tea. So you can add one or two lumps if you want your tea a certain way, or the cream, or take it black, black tea. Who knows? Anyway,
Yeah, and I
Gail's
think that,
rejecting that
yeah,
one totally.
I know.
Rabbi was saying it brings, he, in my mind, is a shaliach, like Shaliach, and we call it malach, which is translated in English so many times as angel. But he is a shaliach of God. And from the very beginning, that's his job.
Right.
He talks in God's name. I always said he has a red phone directly to God. And there are not many people in the Tanakh that have that
Yes.
direct line.
And for a long time. That's very true. So now we are about to start a new journey. A new journey. Some may say, well, it's a continuation of the old journey. But if somebody would care to read verses 20 through to 25.
Okay.
Okay, I will.
Okay.
They came to Marah, but they could not drink the water of Marah because it was bitter. That
Wait a
is
minute,
why-
wait. We are still in,
Said 23 to,
we are still in Exodus 15, verse 22.
oh, 22. Okay, I thought you said 23.
Oh, okay.
All right, I'll go back to 22. Then Moses caused Israel to set out from the Sea of Reeds. They went on into the wilderness of Shur. They traveled 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. They came to Marah, but they could not drink the water of Marah because it was bitter. That is why it was named Marah. And the people grumbled because Moses, saying, "What shall we drink?" So he cried out to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a piece of wood. He threw it into the water, and the water became sweet. I'm sure you're going to have me stop there.
Okay, and there he made for them a fixed rule, and there.
Oh, you want me to keep going? There
Yes,
he made for them a
to the end of
fixed rule.
25. Yes.
Oh, okay. I had a paragraph ending, so I
Yes.
stopped. There he made for them a fixed rule, and there he put them to the test.
Okay. Let's start to go over this as well. As we've discussed before, there are several different ways that it has been felt that the Israelites could have gone. And we had that discussion before. A northern route, a southern route, and one in between. Okay. If anyone wants to discuss that, we can. But it says Moses caused Israel to set out.
Well, is Israel a nation yet? I don't think so.
Well, it's a nation. You can that's why I'm raising this question. So, what do you think, Ricky? Is Israel already a nation?
I don't think so. But is this forward-looking, or is this, is this redacting by whoever wrote this particular part of Exodus?
Well, what do you think, if you were to answer your question?
Then Moses caused Israel to set out from the Sea of Reeds. I don't know. I'm just confused. I mean, I don't think they're a nation yet. I don't think they're a nation until they get, well, they are past the Sea of Reeds. I mean, they've gone through, they've gone through the birth canal when the seas parted. So maybe they are a nation at this point. But I don't know if they realize it yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, Gail.
You have to identify this group in some way. You can't just say this bunch of slaves from Egypt set out. You have to put a name on the group, I think is probably why it's used. But.
Okay. Anyone else? I think Gail comes closest. to your answer. So, but what does it mean that he caused them?
It means that grammatically the verb is in a causative sense.
Cause and what?
A
I love it.
causative
I love
tense. It's
Don't get your hand
one of
away.
the, it's one of the very, very strange grammatical idiosyncrasies of the Hebrew language. Okay,
Okay,
that and in
Yeah.
this one, it's not so much the verb travel.
right.
It's the untranslated preposition et, vayisa et, that makes it into a causative verb. He caused them to do it, rather than just they all went together.
Yeah.
That's the emphasis. That's why the translation kind of adds that in. So the inference from the traditional commentators is, why did they, weren't they ready to move on? Why did he have to urge them? Why did he have to make them go? Aren't they say, okay, where do we go now, Mo? Is that it, or what's the story? And there's lots of midrash and commentary about that.
Okay. First, Steve, then Gail.
Yeah, well, just expanding on what the rabbi said, and that is their grammatical form, but the reason for the grammatical form in this case is to demonstrate that Moses is a leader. Leadership doesn't necessarily mean you just point in a particular direction and you kind of hope that people are going to follow you. You have to cause them to follow you. Yeah, in a corporation, it often requires a lot of finessing and people skills. Okay, so here, what it's saying is Moses was indeed the leader of the people. He knew how to get them to do stuff, and his first job was to move them on to the next station, which he did. Hence that grammatical form being used. It's demonstrating the leadership qualities of Moses.
Okay. Yes, Gail.
Yeah, I was just going to say for Ricky, they're referred to as the children of Israel. It has a different sound and meaning than the people of Israel or Israel alone. The children, which means they're in a state of growth, change.
Good point.
Well,
So
most of the time is Bnei Israel, most of the time. And that's why I object that we called the Hebrews, the Israelites, it's Bnei Israel. They are the descendants of Israel.
Of Israel. Yes.
So it's a very powerful way of calling us. And I try to tell you all the time, it's us. We are the descendants of Yaakov, of Israel. Not the Hebrews, not the Israelites. We.
Very good. But in the discussion, yes, Don.
Did you want to continue, Marty, on that?
A little bit, yes.
If you come back.
Because why would it not be the word? Well, there are other words that could have been substituted for cause. It could have said led, encouraged, poked them, okay, prodded them. Why the word caused? Yes, Steve.
Well, it's just, again, just going back to the grammar, it's just kind of the best way that you could, because there's no exact grammatical equivalent in English. So it's not that, again, sometimes we get stuck in the trap of looking at the English. The Tanakh isn't written in English. It is Hebrew. So that's the best
Right.
shot at translating that grammatical form was saying cause to travel, and other translators more or less agreed, hey, that's a more or less pretty good way to explain that, and
Okay.
kind of stuck with it. It's not necessarily that there was a
Got
lot
it.
of thought to that particular word, causing.
Because what comes to mind is that the word cause usually implies that not only did Moses lead them, but the people were also eager to be led to move on. That it's not just one, it's not just the shepherd leading, telling the herd what to do, but the herd itself wanted to move ahead. That's all. Okay, I know I put myself out on a limb, but first Gail, and then Ricky.
I just noticed something. And they went 3 days in the wilderness. So we're at a decisive point here, because at the beginning, they were going to spend 3 days in the wilderness and go back. We're not going back. This is the deciding point. They're not going back, they're going forward. The 3 days is up.
So do you think the word cause includes that?
Could be.
Yeah. And it realizes that they had to have faith.
Mhm.
The wilderness is a bad place. It's wild. That's why it's called wilderness. Yes.
Yeah.
Ricky.
Yeah, I have the Stone edition here, and it says, Moses had to force them to go. Left to their own devices, they would have preferred to remain at the seashore. And then there's two different, the Zohar explains that because the sea was the place where the Jews had achieved prophecy and seen unprecedented revelations of God's power and holiness, they were reluctant to leave it. Then God removed his presence from it and rested in the wilderness. So anyway, that's, let's see, Rashi comments that the Egyptian army, confident of an overwhelming victory, bedecked their horses. Well, anyway, as a result, the Jews were able to go away from the sea with greater wealth than they had taken from Egypt, and they wanted to remain there to collect even more booty. Anyway, that's some of the commentary in the Stone edition.
Very good. Very
Yeah.
good. Thank you. Yes, Rabbi.
Yeah, just want to say, in an arbitrary sense, 3 days journey was probably a typical marking time. It was the same thing like Moses says to Pharaoh, let us go 3 days journey out, and in a way. So it may have been some kind of recognizable distance that everybody understood, rather than something specific or unique about that they went 3 days and then realized they didn't have enough water or whatever it was.
Okay. Very good. Yes, Don.
And I would say,
Oh, wait.
Rabbi, I would say, oh, I'm sorry. No,
It-
regarding the 3 days, is that all the numbers, in my mind, all the numbers that appear in the Torah is just to say like 200 years is a lot. Here is a little. So I'm so sorry, Marty.
It's okay. It's okay. Yes, Don.
It's not.
First, I thank you, Rabbi Norman and Steve, for those insights into causality, linguistics of Hebrew. But that'll keep me going for another week. And now I want to.
The classic text is Weinberg's textbook on biblical grammar.
Weinberg's, okay.
Weinberg's text on biblical grammar. Okay.
And the other thing, following on Steve's discussion of leadership, I'm going to swing out to a digression here, and you can cut me off, and my feelings won't be hurt if it's just too irrelevant. But I don't know how many of you are familiar with fundamentalist Christian group known as the Family, which is based in Washington, D.C. Well, you should make it your business to. Jeff Sherlin wrote a couple of books on this. He infiltrated it as a reporter. But the members of this group are the very highest levels of U.S. political leaders in all three branches of government. And they're the ones that put on the annual prayer breakfast in D.C., which the president attends, and leaders in the Senate and House and Judicial. And William Barr is a prominent member of this. And one of their beliefs is that leaders need to dominate all of society because they believe that leaders are chosen by God. It's kind of a perversion of the chosen people, but they fervently believe this, and they believe that Hitler and Stalin were chosen, and that they are just as powerful leaders as Moses was, and that's how they should be considered in history. This is not some obscure little group. These are the very highest members of our government, but they stay under the radar, as you can understand why. So I'm going way out in left field here, but I just think it's important to mention when you're thinking about leadership and you're thinking about position of Jews in the world vis-a-vis the power brokers in governmental Christianity, because these people are steering our country, and they also believe in that everything they do is to promote the second coming and the destruction of the world and the return of Jesus. This is not obscure stuff. It's kept obscure.
Okay.
So anyway, I'm mentioning it. Jeff Sherlin is his books are worth digging out. They're in the library.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Now, if there was one other thing.
Marty, Grace has a hand up, I think.
Oh, thank you. Yes, Grace.
I've been thinking about Pastor Bruce and wondering what happened to him. Is he okay? I know the last time I thought we heard with him or shared, he was in our study, he had COVID. So do we know how he's doing?
Yes, Rabbi.
As far as I know, he's recovered from the COVID. There's talk about side digressions. There's a group of the interfaith community that has been organizing a demonstration in Green Valley in support of the Ukrainian situation.
Mhm.
And I know that he's involved in that, and they have this demonstration on Saturday mornings. It's one of the reasons why we have difficulty in actually saying whether or not we formally promote it, because it's at the same time as either our Torah study or our worship service on Shabbat. There are some people who are passing the word, and informally, to the best of my knowledge, that's where he is. Which you can say, okay, that's making a statement of praying or coming closer to God with your feet rather than in the study of Torah. So, but I when I speak to him, I'll pass on your concern, Grace. But I believe I really believe that's where he is.
Well, thank you for that. I just want to let you know that I was thinking of him, and okay, good to know. Good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, and Larry's there too now today.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and I think Bev Lake is there, and Gary Melton is there this week too. So
Yeah, it was a hard choice for me not to go.
Yeah,
To
me
right.
too.
It is. Sure.
Frankly, it's it harkens back to what we were saying a few minutes ago. Okay, where's the best place for us to be?
That's right. So what about the drinking water?
Oh, now I gotta go get out stone again.
The water was bitter. And that's why it was named Marah.
They ran out of maror, so they left the R out.
So, yes, Steve.
Yeah, this is not my commentary. This is coming from the Hertz. But that's very clearly a callback to one of the plagues
Yes.
Inflicted on the Egyptians. But this time, God is clearly demonstrating that he is saving his people from that plague in this way. And there's a little bit of discussion afterwards that it says that, I'm just going to jump ahead for a minute. It is a very interesting commentary, and it's one of the older commentaries that's kind of re-quoted. It's a commentary called Malbim, which means sort of enlightener or shedding light. Okay, I'm not sure that one of the rabbis might know who this commentator was who called himself Malbim, but there's a reference in verse 6 that God healed the people in that way from the insertion of the tree, and literally it says that God was your physician. And why physician? Well, a physician demands obedience to his instruction, but only for the purpose of securing the patient's welfare. And that's what the purpose of the statutes of the Lord are. It says later on, it says, these are the statutes. And that's the reference. It's like, these are the doctor's instructions. The doctor being God in this case. And that's from this old commentary, Malbim.
So what is the prescription?
No, what is the prescription?
Yes.
I'm not
Verse
entirely
25.
sure.
Verse 25.
Oh, okay. Because it's jumping ahead. Let me see if they're being
All right.
specific. Oh, he made them a statute and an ordinance, and there he proved them.
Oh, wait a minute. Read before that. Verse 25 is a long one.
Yeah, what shall we do? Let's see.
So Moses, so he cried out to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a piece of wood. He threw it into the water, and the water became sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the principle is that it's sort of a general concept that God set before them the fundamental principle of implicit faith in his providence to be shown by willing obedience to his will. In other words, don't ask a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I pointed out the tree to you. Yeah, it sounds a little weird, but go ahead. This is what I'm telling you to do. Follow the instructions.
Okay.
And you'll see that it'll be to your benefit.
There's also something very literal here too. It's and scientific. Rabbi had his hand up, and Ricky.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me just say, Malbim is Rabbi Meir Leibush,
Okay. Thank you.
Ukrainian mid-19th century.
Okay.
Okay, but then Ricky, and then I'll come back.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, the water being bitter. The Baal Shem Tov interprets homiletically that the references to the people.
Right.
It is human nature that when someone is embittered, he sees everything negatively. Because the people were bitter, they found fault with the water. Bitch, bitch, bitch. Isn't that all they did for the longest time? Or should I say fetch? Anyway, so they're just in such a negative position that everything is just lousy, terrible.
Okay. Yes, Rabbi, you.
It's saying somewhat the same thing that Ricky did. The Hebrew can lead to translating it as that the people were bitter, not the waters,
That's
or
right.
not only the waters, but the people also. That human nature being, well, after things have been going right for us, things have been going great. Now all of a sudden, there, we have no water. What is this? Fetch, fetch, fetch. Right, right.
Okay, very good. Okay, so what is the
Just
treatment?
one thing, Marty.
Yes, please.
This is an association. When Hagar is in the desert, there is an issue of tree and giving her water at the same time. It just came from my reading here and my connection.
Very good. Now, by the way, there is a type of wood that will remove the tannins in the water
Right.
and other albuminous matter. Oak. Most of you are familiar with oak trees and other forms of oak. Can cause it can neutralize the matter, causing it to coagulate and precipitate out. So so we know that is something that can be used in that fashion. Maybe that's why a lot of old buckets were made out of oak.
Yeah, true.
The barrels.
And whiskey barrels.
Yeah. So, Gail, were you going to say something? No. Okay. Yes, Rabbi.
So are we at verse? Did we get to 25 yet?
Yes. Yes, that's where we're ending.
Right. Okay. All right. So I'm looking in the Eitz Chaim, and there's a relatively famous comment that I'd like to throw out here also, and then add a more contemporary. I guess it was Don who was talking about Freud before. Okay, that the water became sweet once the wood had been thrown
Right.
into it. The purpose of religion is not to explain life's bitterness, but to sweeten it, to make it more palatable. The Midrash envisions Moses asking God, "Why did you create brackish water in your world, a liquid that serves no purpose?" And God replies, "Instead of asking me philosophical questions, do something yourself to make the bitter waters sweet." Okay. There's a more contemporary story like that of Freud and a famous physician. I forget his name. That something like that. When I meet up with God, I'm going to ask, why did God create pain? Why did God create cancer? Why did God allow all this to happen? And the other response and says, no, when I meet up with God, I'm going to ask, why didn't God give me the ability to solve it? Or to find the remedy, whatever. So that's a tension within Judaism also throughout the ages.
Very good. Yes, Ricky.
I'm not sure which group of people believes this, but I know it's Eastern, that if you'll be blessed if you have an imperfect child, I'll put it that way, because that gives you the opportunity to show compassion. So it's not a curse that you've got a kid with Down syndrome, extreme Down syndrome or something. It's a blessing that you now can show compassion in that.
Good point. Good point.
And Grace has her hand up.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yes, Grace.
Okay, about the imperfect challenged child that you may have received, it's also known as an exceptional child. And I learned that early on because I worked with exceptional children for 19 years, maybe more. And I remember having an online friend who had a child, and they'd done some tests and knew that he was going to be disabled, and I said, have you ever considered looking at that child as an exceptional child? And his whole feelings around it changed instantly. He had never heard that before. And I always look at them as an exceptional child, exceptional children, whatever that is. And, there's a broad spectrum of people, children with disabilities, if we look at them and encompass them and love them as an exception to the rule. And that's how I see it.
That's a good point. Very good point. Well, what we're going to do is read on a little bit. We have almost a half hour to go. Any other discussion about the bitter water? And yes, Grace.
He takes a branch from a tree, which is going to have, some kind of medicinal purposes because it's still living, right? So this branch, I know it's just a piece of wood or whatever. I would say that it's got some sweet herbs to it, and it's going to change the palatability of the water.
Okay. All right. Yes, Don.
I know a couple of women named Marah, and I wonder why parents would inflict that name on their kids.
Marah or Mariah?
No, Marah.
Huh.
Don't know.
Well, Miriam itself means bitter water.
Right.
So obviously there was the meaning of bitterness either had, it had two different sides to it in the olden days, and it wasn't so bad to name somebody that way. But Marah can also be, if changing the spelling a little bit, but it also can relate to the Mora, which is a teacher or a guide. So again, depending on whichever stream of interpretation and translation they're following. It also could finally, there's the name in English, Moira, the Moira, which could come from one of the the Eastern European, Russian, Slovak kind of names. It may not be originally just from the Hebrew.
Okay.
Yeah, in the Hebrew, we also say Marah Shchora. Marah Shchora meaning kind of, am I in? Meaning kind of depression. Marah Shchora. Yeah, so that's also a state of mind.
Okay.
Marty, I don't think we discussed, and I don't know where to go with it, the last part of verse 25. There he made for them a fixed rule, and there he put them to the test. We sort of stopped.
And that's coming. We're going to read what the test is.
25, but it's a new paragraph. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's a new paragraph in the English. It's not a new paragraph in the Hebrew.
Hebrew.
No, I know, right. But I had stopped at the water became sweet, but then Marty asked me to finish, 25. So I know it's into the next paragraph, which is in the English, but I don't know. Is that where we're going?
Yes.
Okay.
So if you want to read 26.
Okay. There he made for them a fixed rule, and there he put them to the test. He said, if you will heed the Lord your God diligently, doing what is upright in his sight, giving ear to his commandments and keeping all his laws, then I will not bring upon you all of the diseases that I brought upon the Egyptians, for I am the Lord your healer. So you obey me, otherwise I'm going to smite you down with the same plagues I did the Egyptians.
So
Okay.
drinking this water was their booster
First
vaccine.
test.
Was there what?
Their booster vaccine.
Aha.
So they're going to have to go through a number of trials
Yeah.
to continue to show their faith. And this is really the first test. Oh, but so
Should I read 27?
he's setting us up for the 10 Commandments.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other comments about this? So then you want to read verse 27.
Yeah. And they came to Elim, where
Elim.
Elim, okay, where there were 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees, and they encamped there beside the water. Yeah, and I can see them wanting to stay there too. I like 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees.
So what would you learn from this type of experience?
That there are rewards along the way if I do the right things.
Yeah, there are pitfalls, there are things that are going to be in your way, but if you recognize them and figure out ways to keep going, you will eventually reach the oasis. Okay. Any other comments about that? Well, 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees, that is almost enough to take care of everyone, depending on how many we think we're in this, if you will, army of Israelites or family of Israel. So because we have read different numbers in different sources. So basically, this is a reiteration of what we had said before. Now I want to shift gears. We have also, we have spoken about this, a whole sequence of events now on different levels. But when we think about what all of the things that we have endured and the feelings that the people endured, it comes to mind that the Seder plate is also a description of our own brain and how we think and feel.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is this also just a reiteration of another series of symbols that we would want to have in our mind at all times? You know, rituals, and as I said before, they're not just there for show and everything. So what there? Have we ever felt bitter? Have we ever felt salt? Have we ever felt rebirth or simply birth?
But we also do a sandwich of charoset and maror. So we put together the sweet and the salty.
That's right. That is exactly right. We have different aspects of this. And so our human experience is also very much the same. It's not just, so it is, that's why I say it, as we think about the entire thing, and we have 6 months to mull over all of this in our own lives to see where we have strayed, so we can return to the path, return to the way, if you will. And so I think that when we start looking at it in terms of this, it's a much more important part of of the story than, just something we rehash every year. There has to be more meaning to all of this. And if you find your way by following verse 26, okay, you too will come to 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees and be rewarded. So we all have to find our way to the 70 palm trees.
Well, it's on I-10 in California. It's the area around Indigo, Desert Hot Springs, Palm Springs, and all of those places. And I've spent a lot of time there when RVing, and that's immediately what I thought of. That wonderful place in the middle of a ridiculous desert.
Okay. What I was going to do is I thought this may be a reasonable place to stop. We've really put Exodus 15 to the task. So do you want to stop at this point, or do you want to go on? We have a choice.
Seems like a logical place to stop.
I'm leaving it up to everyone to decide. Steve, Michael, anyone? So Ricky, we're going with what Ricky says.